Thank you for coming. We're going to get, let's see, we're going to give it about 30 more seconds and then we'll start.
You're okay.
And I will just ask everyone to mute themselves. And then obviously unmute if you ask a question, but thank you. Okay, thanks everybody. Thank you for coming tonight. We are recording this meeting and it's going to go up on our YouTube channel afterwards, probably tomorrow. And I want to welcome to the Mass Pollinator Network's April meeting, where we're going to have a presentation by Jocelyn Demuth. First, I want to announce our brown bag lunch, which is our fairly new program, and it is next one is happening tomorrow, Wednesday, May 1st at noon. I'm putting the registration link in the Zoom chat. It's very informal. Come and go. You don't have to arrive at noon and stay until 1. You can pop in, ask questions, meet other advocates, share things you're working on. It's fun and informative, and we never quite know where it's going to take us. So I hope you join us. And what else? This is really exciting. What I was doing today was helping set up maybe the first ever, I have no idea, but the first for the Pollinator Network, Pollinator Art Show. And it's at the Irving Public Library. I strongly recommend you to go by if you're anywhere close. I'm hoping at some point to have an online Zoom presentation with artists, but currently we have 2 wonderful artists, John Barnett, who is a macro photographer and does amazing close-ups of pollinators on their plants. And then we have Daisy Hebb, who does delicate and colorful, just really beautiful watercolors of native plants and pollinators. So please go check it out. We're going to have an opening reception on Sunday, May 19th from 2 to 4 p.m. And I think there's a lot going on that day at the library anyway, with food trucks and an unveiling of a sculpture. So if you're anywhere near Irving, I do suggest you stop by. And let's see, what else do we have? Our next meeting is going to be Tuesday, May 28th, 7 p.m. I'm going to drop the registration link in the chat. We were going to have a Todd Bittner talk on turning your lawns into meadows, and unfortunately he's had to reschedule. So I'm not exactly sure what we're going to talk about, but I promise it will be something interesting, and I will announce it as soon as we've decided. So now, to get on to the main event, I'm going to introduce our passionate and diligent steering committee member, Anna Henchett, and she will take it from here. Anna, go ahead.
Thank you. And welcome, Jocelyn. It's nice to see you again. Jocelyn is probably known to most of you as the owner, excuse me, of Checker Spot Farm in Coleraine. It's one of the few native plant nurseries around. So that's the way I found out about her at first. And then finally last fall, I found out that she was writing a curriculum for elementary age kids. And that was really thrilling to me, because so many teachers have asked for good curricular suggestions. And this is one of the few that's come along. Last month, Trevor Smith mentioned his, and that's also an excellent one. But this one is for younger kids. Trevor's is a little older. Jocelyn wasn't always a nursery woman. It's quite a recent endeavor. I think you'll have to tell us how many years you've been there, Jocelyn. I can't remember, but she spent 29 prior years as a teacher, not of ecological studies or the environment, but of all things Latin, which probably helps you out a lot with the Latin names, but I don't know what else in terms of pollinators. Anyway, she has taught in public, private, and parochial schools, charter schools, and in all different places, apparently, and grades 6 through advanced placement. So having met that challenge of keeping students' attention with the distant and not very physical involving subject of Latin, well, at least my teacher wasn't physically involved. she was prepared to make this new topic intriguing. So one glance at your personal website, Latina Hilara, reveals that you make your subject engaging and accessible to students by combining instruction with entertainment. And you are entertaining, I can vouch for that. It's not so much what you teach, but how you teach it is your philosophy.
Yeah.
So, Hilara translates into English as to cheer, gladden, or give cheerful appearance to. And that is certainly evidenced in Jocelyn's presentations. And I did note that it's also, Hilara is also the root word of hilarious. So that gives you an idea of some of her approach. Let's see, you learned pretty much about the environment on Checker Spot Farm, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, I'm part of the presentation is about sort of my journey from.
Right. Yeah. So I won't go into that, but
Okay.
She was learning on the fly and has put a lot of that into her curriculum, which is quite exciting, I must say. I recently heard your presentation at the teachers conference in Springfield. It was about Pussy Toes, which is the current one that's out. Is the next one out yet?
It's going to be uploaded, I hope, May 15th. I'm a little behind because.
Well, this is the first part of her whole curriculum, 500-yard field trip, and it's for grades K through 2. And I'm thrilled that such a dynamic and inquisitive teacher is creating this curriculum, because it's a great teaching tool for both the kids and their teachers to learn about the environment and really get a hands-on connection with it. So really appreciate your work, Jocelyn, and welcome.
All right, should I start? Yes, no,
I guess.
all right.
Yes.
Let her rip. Okay, so I'm going to push the share button. Here it is. Okay, that's the one I want. Okay, hopefully. All right, so yes, I own the native plant nursery Checker Spot Farm, which is in Coleraine on Route 112. Now, Renee, people should feel free to ask questions as we go along. Renee is going to be keeping track of looking at the chat and, people having their hands up, and just interrupt me when someone needs to speak, because I've not able to do that and run this slideshow. When I was Zooming in the pandemic, I would have been able to do it, but I'm a little rusty. So anyway, the curriculum is contained on a website called 500yardfieldtrip.com, and this is the logo. The curriculum is sponsored. I got it's sponsored by a grant from the FDA. So essentially, nursery plants are called a specialty crop. And this is a special grant to promote specialty crops. So I wrote a grant or a proposal saying that if we could get more native plants into schools, then there would be more purchase of native plants, and that would increase production. That was sort of the germ, but really my goal is to really increase education about native plants. And so the whole curriculum is free. You don't need to buy, no teacher needs to buy anything. You can just download it, and then use whatever you want from it. And I called it 500-yard field trip because I remember, whenever in elementary school, whenever we needed to go look at something nature, I grew up on Long Island, which is not a particularly natural place. We'd have to get on a bus and go somewhere. And so the idea is that if we put the plants on the school property, then we don't have to take a field trip to look at nature. We could just go outside and look at it. So that was the idea for the name of the title. Okay, well, hang on. I don't think I'm sharing quite the right thing. Hang on, I'm gonna share some. I think I'm sharing the wrong thing. Here I am. Let's share this. Okay. Okay. All right, good. Okay, so this is my store. This is me on Route 112. That's pretty much all you need to know about that. And I wanted to talk a little bit about my journey to, native plant advocate, because I feel pretty betrayed by my own education. Like, the education that I received in public school did not really prepare me to be a good steward of the planet. A lot was left out. There are a lot of basic things I did not know, and I think a lot of other people didn't know. So, mostly up until about 10 years ago, I really didn't know anything about native plants. I didn't know much about gardening. I was not a master gardener. And I always like to, go to Lowe's and pick up, 10 colorful things and stick them in the yard and then watch them grow. And I planted burning bush and I planted all kinds of stuff that you're not supposed to. I've used pesticides, liberally, but occasionally, I just didn't know. But that all changed when my cat, Lady Jane, who is pictured here, died. She was 21 years old when she died. And she outlived like a whole lot of things. Like to say 1 marriage, 5 dogs, and 3 cats. So we put pussy toes on her grave, or my husband did, it seemed like a fitting flower. But then the weird thing happened is that this butterfly showed up, which is the American lady. And the pussy toes are her host plant, but I'd never seen this butterfly before. And so it was sort of very surprising to me in a pleasant way that, my God, suddenly we have a butterfly. And then, my husband started adding more native plants to the yard. I wasn't really paying attention to what he was doing, because we had a yard that was mostly sand. And so pretty much nothing, everything we planted was just like, slowly died. And we got tired of that. So he put native plants in with the idea that perhaps we wouldn't have to replace them every season. And that was true. They didn't die. But not only that, they brought a lot of creatures that I had never seen before. And these are some pictures of butterflies that we saw in Chelmsford that showed up after we put in a very tiny pollinator garden. I mean, not large at all. And I was just sort of fascinated by how things changed. I had a sterile yard, like a lot of people do, because it was mostly ornamentals and Kentucky bluegrass, but I didn't know it was sterile. I had no idea until it wasn't. And I also didn't understand why things had changed. Like, why were suddenly all these butterflies here that weren't here before? I had lots of flowers. Why did they suddenly show up? Well, the reason for that, as I'm sure all of you know, is because native plants provide nectar and pollen. And a lot of our ornamentals don't provide much pollen. A lot of them are bred to not have pollen because no one wants to be allergic. People don't understand they're not allergic to, they're only allergic to certain types of pollen, but that doesn't matter. And most of our ornamentals have very little nectar, and some have none. So that the fact that butterflies were looking for nectar and pollen was news to me. I did not know this. Another thing I did not know is that butterflies or caterpillars can be, all creatures can be just separated in terms of, categorized in terms of specialists and generalists. You know, specialists eat only a few plants. You know, some of them have more variety than others, and generalists eat a wide variety of plants. I didn't know that 70% of our butterflies are specialists, like the American lady. And that part of the reason why I didn't have any butterflies is because I didn't have any plants that the caterpillars would eat to create more butterflies. That was news. And so, you know, all of this is pretty basic ecology, right? You know, butterflies need nectar, plants make, you know, nectar and pollen, and butterfly and caterpillar. Actually, I later learned that all insects, 90% of insects are specialists. And so that insects only eat certain plants. And the plants that they eat are logically the plants that they evolved with, you know, on the same continent, in the same area. All of this makes logical sense. But I didn't know that. You know, and I was a kid who was really interested in animals and all things ecology. You know, it was, I was a good student. I was one of those kids who was paying attention, you know, so it wasn't that I wasn't in school that I didn't know this. This was just left out of my education. And it is the reason that I did the things that everybody else did. I bought pesticides, I put in ornamentals, I planted invasive plants without knowing all the damage that they could, you know, cause, because my basic education was lacking. Now, when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about the education I did get. You know, we had, you know, growing up, you know, I'm 50 something, so I'm a Gen X person. You know, there were a number of like environmental messages that were, you know, the more you know type things, you know, things that were ads and came on as part of on billboards and things. And, you know, one of the things that came up a lot was about not littering, right? I don't know if people remember this, this ad. You remember this ad? But the sad Indian, and he's going, you know, and he sees all the pollution and all the litter. It was very moving, and was played a lot. You know, it was about not littering. So that was a message that I got growing up. You know, don't litter. Why is this not? Do I have to? Why is this not working? I don't know why my next. All right. Here's another one, you know, don't set forest fires. Remember Smokey the Bear? That was another message that was loud and clear in my education, right? Stop, drop, and roll, what to do if you're on fire. That was part of my education, right? Remember Woodsy the Owl, give a hoot, don't pollute. So it wasn't that there weren't environmental messages in my general education from the government, from television. There were, but none of them were really about ecology. The ecology messages about insects and biodiversity and interdependence, that was basically co-opted by the pesticides company. And there wasn't anybody, there was no organization, there was no teacher that basically was in balance of this. You know, there were tons and tons of, and there still are, pesticide commercials and ads. A lot of them were cartoonish. You know, basically the idea of all of these said that insects are bad. If you see one like this billboard, there's a lot more, and you better step in and kill them all before they take over. That was the, you know, that was the message, and nobody disputed that growing up. my parents did not dispute that. I grew up in the suburbs where on Long Island, which is like land of the perfect lawn. And for my father, good ecology management was having a lush, weed-free lawn. And I remember, when we would drive somewhere, we were driving back home, they would look at everybody's lawn and just sort of judge it as they were driving by. And one of the things that I've sort of learned or pondered is like when you grow up in the suburbs, the lawns, or at least where I grew up, are sort of removed. It's all sort of these private spaces, and so the space is too big to sort of like see your neighbors. And so part of how we judged what might be happening with our neighbors is by looking at the lawn. I remember, like, if the lawn had too many weeds or hadn't been mowed, my mother might say, oh, well, I think that family's getting divorced, or, I heard he lost his job. So an untidy lawn was sort of reflected an untidy house. No way did we want our lawn to be untidy. That there was something amiss emotionally, or something was wrong inside the house if your lawn was a mess. And my father used, pesticides, not liberally, but now and then. He certainly sprayed a ton of dandelions. We sprayed all the oak trees when the spongy moth, which used to be called gypsy moth caterpillars, came by. And all of this was normal to me. And, the result of my ecology or education, which was, pretty mostly was warped, is my ecology education is really reflected. I think it's very similar to a lot of education that people had. And the result of it is that we've really done, as I know people here know, done some serious damage to the insect population and the environment that's directly around us. Forget about the polar bears or the rhinoceroses. We've done some terrible damage to the world, to the environment right outside our door. And I've been a part of that. Okay. I think a lot of people have been a part of it. And I was a part of it because of ignorance. And what's clear now is that we have got to change our education of the next generation. We've got to do it soon, because if we don't, we're in a lot of trouble. I think this problem is, this is sort of like global warming's dastardly sister. I mean, we don't have the luxury of having another generation being as ignorant as my generation was, because the consequences are going to be environmental collapse. We're kind of, as I'm sure you know, we're on the verge of it right now. We have to reverse it. And how we reverse it is we have to do better with the education. People cannot live in the ignorance that I did. And of course, one of the things I'm sure you all know, the plummeting number of caterpillars and butterflies has affected the terrestrial bird population. This information has been made very clear by Doug Tallamy. And, again, things I did not know. No idea. Now, when if you're my age or young or older, or even younger, I mean, part of how we know I know that we are in trouble, even without without having read Tallamy or any other information, is that I remember what the world looked like when I was a kid, and I see it now, and it's different, and not in a good way. I mean, people have written about the lack of fireflies. I remember collecting them as a kid. I'm sure you do as well. And I remember when I was going outside to, the summer, there'd be just this cloud of moths around the light bulb. I remember my mother yelling, shut the door, don't let the moths in. And there was just an enormous amount of moths, all different sizes. Now I look at my, outside light bulb, there's just the tiniest little group of moths around that light bulb. Other people, insects that used to wind up smushed on your windscreen, they're just not there anymore. And so we know, like, even if you've not done any reading, everybody our age knows that there's been a change. But students today don't know that. They don't know there's been a change, because how would they? The sterile world that they live in is what they think is normal. And that's a dangerous assumption for us to allow students to make. Does anyone have any questions while I'm rambling on? I forgot how quiet Zoom chats are. All right. Let me go on. Okay. So one of the things that I've tried to include in when I wrote this environmental education is I tried to include a lot of names of things. One of the things I think that, science education has forgotten is that, as humans, we are a naming, species. We need to give things names. That's what we do. And when I was a little kid, I could name maybe 10 different species of plants, maybe 10 different species of insects. But whenever I saw one, I would get excited and just say the name in my head, because that was something I recognized. And so part of what we need to do with the new generation is we need to give them more things to recognize. We can't expect them to take care of the environment around them if they don't have any idea what it is. And so let me move this. These are some pictures of things that I knew. I remember an adult, I don't even know which one, told me about sassafras, and that its leaves look like a mitten, and that if you ripped it, it smelled like root beer. And so I was always looking for sassafras leaves because I could identify them. I knew what they were. Ladybugs, ladybug, fly away home. I mean, a lot of things I learned were from nursery rhymes. Buttercups, right? You ever hold that buttercup underneath your chin or your friend's chin to see if they like butter, which doesn't make any sense. But again, so I was always, looking for buttercups. And of course, dandelions and acorns were fun things, to play with. But that's pretty much all I knew. Now I know when I sell native plants, there are some people who come to the store who have had the benefit of usually grandparents who took them out in the woods or took them around the field and helped them name many more species of plants and insects. And those people have clearly developed a love of ecology. And it's simply by knowing what is around. Okay, so I wanted to show you the, hopefully this will open. So this is the website, 500-yard field trip about, that's contains the curriculum. So let's see. So this is pretty much everything I've explained about why we need more ecology curriculum. These are some previews about the curriculum.
Jocelyn, we can't see it. We can only see the URL.
Oh, well, that's not good. All right. All right, I'm going to stop sharing then, and I'm going to share the, I guess I'm going to have to go directly to the, okay, I'm going to share the, let's see. Let's see. Did that work?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, great. So this is the homepage for the curriculum. What was I going to say? Okay. So this page, this tab, downloads. This is where you just can download the curriculum. All you got to do is add it to the cart. My, web provider insisted on adding a cost, which is 000. It's not going to charge you anything. And then the other thing that it contains is, so when I wrote the curriculum, I wanted it to be require as little research for teachers as possible, because having been a teacher for 29 years, I know you get 40 minutes to send emails, find a working copier, call parents, and correct and develop new stuff, which means you don't get a lot of time to develop new curriculum. So part of the problem with teachers is they don't really know what to do, and they don't know what to plant. And so each curriculum, there's the K through 2 curriculum, is about pussy toes. And the 3 through 5 curriculum contains a group of meadow flowers. All of these have been chosen because they grow well on a school property. They grow well in full sun, sandy soil, and they don't spread, and they don't need much help from you. Nobody needs to come by and water them in the summer. And so this and then, so not only, you also don't have to figure out where to get the plants, because all of these native plant nurseries in Massachusetts know about the grant. They know what plants are required. And you can just, click on one of them and pick up the plants. The price for a flat of plants varies depending, upon the nursery. But you don't need to, nobody needs to be driving around or figuring out how to mail order, or it's all right there. Let's see. Okay. So yeah, so anyway, that's pretty much the website. I want to talk, let's see. All right, I'm going to stop sharing that, and now I'm going to go back to the presentation. Okay. Oops. Okay. Where were we? Okay. All right. So, okay. So the curriculum, the K through 2 curriculum is about the plant called pussy toes. Pussy toes are small, compact plants. They make, as I showed earlier, these little white flowers in May, so they'll be blooming during school, which looks like a cat's paw. And it's because these plants are really tough. They can be planted by really young kids. They don't really care if their roots get smushed or they get ripped in half. They're okay with it. They live in shade, they live in sun, they live under walnut trees, they live under pine trees. So they can really be planted pretty much anywhere on the school property. The only place they don't like wet. So I wouldn't plant them in any place that, floods or becomes wet. But all of this is also included in the directions for planting as well. So, and because they host the American Lady Butterfly, it's a really good, and because the American Lady comes through New England in late April, I saw one on my property yesterday. and through May, it's something that kids could very easily see. She shows up like clockwork. I saw her in Chelmsford. I've seen her in Coleraine. You know, and the butterfly, does is some pretty cool habits. I don't know if you can see this little caterpillar here, guys. So the caterpillar is this little attractive, uh, burgundy with little jewels on him, and he's only 2 inches long. And they make little leaf houses, which, are something I think little kids would certainly enjoy seeing. And the leaf houses get bigger and bigger as the caterpillar gets bigger. And when you open up a big house, you'll see that they have several chambers. There's a poo chamber, and then there's a sleeping chamber, that the caterpillar makes. So I think, they're really, they're easy to plant, and they should attract an insect that will teach kids about pollination and the metamorphosis of caterpillars into butterflies. A couple of people have wondered, who are familiar with Dr. Gregier's work, well, why aren't I concentrating on the butterflies that are becoming rare? Well, because I think it's important that kids see something, that they see a butterfly. And they're just not going to see a lot of kids, because if you've been through a school property, you realize it's a very sterile environment. I want kids to see a butterfly. And the research says that it isn't just the rare butterflies that are, losing ground. All butterflies are losing ground. There's some research says that there are about half the number of butterflies that there was 10 years ago. And that's not just the rare ones, that's all species. So anyway, all of the plants that I've chosen for these units are tied to butterflies and caterpillars and other insects that should show up when the plants are in place. And so anyway, the American lady makes this tiny little, like 2-inch cocoon, and after about 2 weeks, she comes out, and it isn't hard to watch that happen. Unlike the monarch, I don't recommend that people keep the caterpillar for its whole duration, because they like to curl up the leaves, this caterpillar, and hide. And pussy toes is not a plant that does well indoors, I've discovered. It doesn't like to live inside. I've killed a couple of my plants by trying to raise caterpillars inside. In addition, in the curriculum, talking about different characteristics of caterpillars and butterflies, I try to bring in a lot of other there's a lot of discussion of defenses, and I try to bring in many pictures of New England caterpillars, things that people might reasonably see walking anywhere. These are all caterpillars from New England, and actually all of these pictures were taken at my farm, with the exception of this Abbott Sphinx. He's trying to be a grape here. He eats grapes, and he curls up like this when he's feeling defensive, because he's trying to show you that he's actually a grape. And then if you're not frightened by that, he's got this fake eye. And if you're not frightened by that, he'll hiss at you, which, let me tell you, that is a bit surprising. So these are all caterpillars that live on, various plants. And, part of the discussion of pussy toes is about the general defenses that caterpillars have, snake mimics, some of them, the colorfulness, trying to look poisonous, the furry caterpillars. This one, it's the American dagger moth. This one actually hurts, but even the ones that don't have any venom or irritant in their bristles, eating a bristle is not something that it's hurtful to the top of your mouth if you're a bird. So it's about, and then of course camouflage. And again, I'm trying to educate kids about the names of things they might see if they look. So yeah, anyway, these are all the topics that are covered in the Pussy Toes units. These are all things that are tied to the national science standards, which I'll talk about in a minute. Okay, so the 3 to 5 unit, I initially called Caterpillar Palooza, but as I read through the standards, I discovered that really Mini Meadow was a better title because it was more in line with the science standards. And for this unit, if you want to do this unit, basically you go to the native plant nursery and you say, give me the Mini Meadow package, and you will get a goldenrod. Depending upon what goldenrod depends upon where you are. A little blue stem, a smooth blue aster, orange milkweed, and golden Alexanders, and big blue stem. And there's a map for how you can plant these all together. So all of these plants support a variety of pollinators and different caterpillars. All of them, like part sun, full sun, they're all very drought tolerant. None of these are big spreaders. The reason, of course, I chose the orange milkweed as opposed to the common milkweed is because common milkweed spreads. Orange milkweed is very well behaved. It generally doesn't move from where you plant it. As smooth-leafed aster is the same thing. So that's the basis for this next unit, which and in the next unit, I spent a lot of time doing this. I created a card game, which you can just print out when you download the curriculum. The card game is called Meadow, and you can play it, like 4 kids can play it together. I've inflicted this upon the people in my house, trying and trying it. And the goal is to sort of, you draw cards and build a meadow. And so if you draw a plant card, you put the plants in your meadow, and then you can add bugs, insects that depend upon the plants. And then there's also deer that may come by and eat your plants. There are invasive plants that may take out some of your plants. And so the person with the most diverse meadow at the end of the game wins. And these are point values. Okay. About the link to an informative article about the true story of the crying Indian. Yeah, I think he was Italian, the actor who played the crying Indian. I don't think he was Native American at all. But anyway, that was a powerful ad. And then there are other presentations about a lot of the impetus in this grade is about how plants and animals adapt to certain situations. And so I found that kind of again, sort of against the grain of what we now know, because what we now know is that a lot of insects don't adapt. If they did, we wouldn't be in this crisis. And so the sort of the sense of the standards is that it's learning about how plants and animals adapt, but the truth is that they don't. Some do, but most don't, which is why we're in this crisis. So that's kind of part of the lesson of this. I don't know why I can't. All right, so next year, there will be 2 middle school curriculum units up on the website for middle school teachers. The other 2 will, the 2 elementary school units will remain, obviously. And there are some free trays of plants that are built into the curriculum, into the grant for schools that are on the environmental justice map. what that generally means Title I schools. So you can get, there's a form that you can fill out on the website. It says if you want to do the curriculum and you're in an environmental justice district, you can get some free plants. Basically, to get the free plants, I am requiring that people do the curriculum, and that also that they publicize that they're doing it in either their local, like write a press release to your local paper or your school Facebook page or your school newsletter, publicize what you're doing in some way so that I can, further publicize the units. All right.
Jocelyn, we have a question. Can you mention again how we can get the card game?
Well, the card game is going to be part of the next unit. You can just, all the cards will be downloadable and you can just print them. I'm also working with a gaming company, and I'm going to just, that makes, actual playing cards in a box, and I will create, so you can also buy it as well. So if you don't, like, if you just want to buy it, you can, it'll be you'll be able to order it, I think, from the Checker Spot website, while I'll carry it in my store, or you can, there'll be a link on the, this website as well, but you don't have to buy it. It can be, you can just print all the papers and just, it's not going to be that hard to put together because everything, you
Sorry. So
you
who
can-
are you?
put them all together and cut them out all at once. Did someone have a question? I heard something.
I think it was someone that
Oh,
didn't
okay.
realize they weren't muted.
Okay. All right. Okay, so as I was researching, one of the things, I don't know how many people are teachers here, but the way teaching now works is every subject has a set of standards. These are things that you are supposed to be teaching. And most districts require that you write the standard that you are teaching that hour on the board. And not having a standard that you are teaching to is something that can become a fireable offense. If after your observation and your administrator says, what standard were you teaching, and you don't have an answer, that's pretty bad. So standards are things that all teachers have to pay attention to. The standards for Massachusetts and 20 other states are something called the Next Generation Science Standards. Now, Massachusetts has made their own, but mostly they are pieces of the Next Generation Science Standards. So, and these were sort of difficult to work with, and I'll show you why. So here, you can see the units for kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth, and fifth grade under the New Generation Science Standards. You'll notice that every single grade is learning about engineering and design. Oops. And you'll notice that in first grade, there is no life science at all. Nothing. Second grade, this is a pretty good. And then in fifth grade, there's no life science at all. So the goal of the National Science Standards is to talk about systems, all the different systems, which frankly is an awful lot of information for very young kids. And engineering is the highlight, and life science often gets the short shrift. So when you open one of these, if you click on this on the website, New Generation Science Standards, you get something like this, which is supposed to show you all the things you're supposed to teach for that standard. I find this diagram as clear as mud. You know, there's an awful lot of performance expectations, practices, core ideas, cross-getting complex, and then all these other things underneath. It's extremely overwhelming. And there are many of them every year. And so what that also means is that a teacher attempting to cover all the standards that he or she is required for the year has to move really quickly.
Jocelyn, we have a question.
Yep.
In the first grade curriculum, is structure and functioning the biology standard?
Yes, but it's not just biology. And so what I did, I used that standard in the Pussy Toes. And I talked about the structure and the function of caterpillar parts, the structure of their bodies, their mouth parts, their eyes, how they adhere onto leaves, and things like that. But it's not, it doesn't necessarily refer to life science. And okay, so, all right, so here, these are all the first grade, yeah, so molecules, organisms, structures and processes. See, so these are all the structure, these are all the topics for first grade. Hereditary, really? So they're sort of, you know, they're pretty varied. And require actually, I think, more information than your average first grader knows. Okay, so grade 2 has more life science in it. But one of the problems I've found with this whole system, and I understand why they did it. I mean, I'm not going to argue that it isn't important for kids to understand how systems work, how ecology works, how things work. Obviously, that is important. But I think my 2 cents is that I think this has gone way too far the other way, because it's all about systems. And throughout the science standards, you'll see things like this, notes like this: specific animals and plant names are not expected. So they don't want you to teach about specific names of plants, specific names of animals, which, as I reflect on my mistreatment of the environment, is part of the reason why I just didn't know, because I didn't know what plants were around. I didn't know what insects were around. I didn't know what was invasive. I didn't know what was native. I didn't know why any of that was important, because nobody taught me the names of anything. And that is still that is the focus here. All right. Okay, so I want you to notice, so this is so physical science. Most of what I've discovered as I've gone through the standards is that the standard list for every science is much longer for physical science, space, physics, certainly computers, or certainly engineering is much longer and more in detail than life science. Now, when I was looking for, diagrams, food web diagrams related to or tagged with new generation science standards, I mean, some of this is really kind of nonsensical. I mean, here we have 4 plants that have really nothing in common. They don't live on the same continent. And this is how they're connected, kind of. What's interesting is, to me, is that, I was looking through all of these diagrams, trying to find one how caterpillars fed baby birds. I couldn't find a single one. In fact, this one at least has insects in it. A lot of these diagrams have one token insect to sort of indicate the jump from insect to mammals, which is just wrong. So anyway, as okay, well, good, we got 5 minutes. So as I was, creating this curriculum, I became convinced that we really need to do better for the next generation if we're going to reverse this damage that we have done. And that the tools we have in place, particularly the new generation science standards, are not up to the task to do so. And so I think I've been talking for almost 45 minutes, and I think I'm going to end there. See if anyone has any questions or comments or jokes they'd like to tell.
People are welcome to raise your hands, or you can just start speaking if no one else is speaking. Jocelyn, do you want to stop sharing so everyone can see?
Yeah.
Maybe that will inspire more questions.
Sure.
I have a question. How do you know how many classrooms are using this curriculum?
No, I do not. I haven't had time. I get that information is contained, the website is collecting it. What I am discovering is that the curriculum isn't just being downloaded in Massachusetts. It's being downloaded all over the country, which is good, but it isn't kind of what I expected, because the grant is to increase the production. I mean, that's the goal of the grant, is to increase the purchasing of native plants in Massachusetts, because it's a grant from the Massachusetts Department of Agriculture. I have a lot of people who have downloaded the curriculum from Ohio, from Pennsylvania, from New York, Rhode Island, all over the place. And so, I mean, I'm glad that they're using it, but it isn't helping. It isn't tying to the data I have to collect. I mean, part of the problem is that I haven't, I'm just finishing, I'm behind writing the curriculum for 3 through 5 now. And then after I get that up, I need to, a bunch of people have applied for free plants. I need to go through those applications and connect with them and, see what I can do in terms. So I haven't really done that research yet. The data is there. I just haven't had a chance to look at it.
We have time for probably one question.
Yeah, it's going to be, well, I don't have a question. I just I just think you're amazing. I think this is wonderful what you're doing. I look forward to connecting with you further. I want to have some of the kids, I'm going to apply to do this. And I really appreciated when you talked about the PSAs, because yes, I'm a Gen X and I remember them all. They were impactful.
Yes.
And I am just thinking like next steps, like just a PSA around protecting our pollinators, like
exactly.
Because Saturday morning cartoons, we had, what is a bill, and
right.
If a girl can do it, a guy can too. Like,
right.
So I just wanted to appreciate you. I think you're amazing. I look forward to downloading your stuff and collaborating with you further. My name is Tori Antonino. I'm with Green and Open Somerville. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Jocelyn, we did have a question about if the grant would be applicable to high school age students.
It is not. High school is totally different. Each year you take a totally different science. And biology, it could be applicable in terms of if there was an ecology class or ecology group or an after school group that wanted to create a pollinator garden or wanted to do a community service project, and the teacher didn't want to be bothered with, creating the why and where this is important. They could certainly borrow one of those presentations to make the point to the students. But no, high school is its own curriculum. I can't write that, unfortunately.
Thank you so much. This was terrific. I really appreciate you coming to talk to us about this, and I imagine people will want
Thank
to follow
you.
up with you. There are lots of comments of how great it is in the notes if you want to take a look at them later. I will send out to everyone who registered, so all of you will get a link to the recording and a copy of the chat. So thanks, everybody. See you next time.
All
Hope to
right.
see you at the brown bag lunch tomorrow at noon, and good night.
Good night. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for coming.